So I hope everybody is building and see how that finally comes out. So with that said, let me turn it over to Rick and Maureen Hunter for their build along of the Hunterline 30-foot King Truss Bridge. Rick, Maureen, welcome.
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
I'm great.
Oh, I did unmute myself. Okay, now if I can switch screens here.
Share screen.
All right, we did. Welcome, everyone. This is our session 2 for our build along. We're building our 30-foot King Post Truss Bridge. Last week we started by doing the distressing of the wood and so on. Tonight, what we want to accomplish is some cutting, and then we're going to stain everything. So Maureen is all set up, ready to go here. But first thing we want to do is cut our stringers. Our first sub-assembly is going to be the ties and stringers, called the tie stringer assembly. So we have to prepare the stringers, cut them to length, okay? The best thing is you can see on the drawing there where the stringers are, and then you're just going to cut them full length. So Maureen's going to take over.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody had the opportunity last week to tape their drawing to the board, but make sure you tape your drawing to the board. You can use, if you're doing narrow gauge, you're going to use the 14-foot clearance drawing. And if you're doing the standard, you're going to do the 16-foot clearance drawing. So just tape it onto the board and cover it with wax paper, so you can do all your cutting right on the drawing, and you won't damage your drawing. And you can do the gluing right on the drawing. So we've got the 12x18s, which are your stringers, and they're already distressed. So just lay it on your drawing, and you're going to the outer edge of that drawing. And just start cutting.
I can add in here that you see these timbers here are 12x18. That is what says that this is a railroad bridge as opposed to a road bridge. A road bridge would not use a 12x18. They'd go down to maybe a 6x12 or an 8x12, something littler, okay? But the 12x18 is sturdy enough that it will hold the weight of the locomotive and the whole consist. You know that you can see that Maureen is using the automation sander. We're not using the repeater on this one. It's just to clear the ends, make them a little better.
You can use it, just use your file, just to take off the little bit of fuzz that might be there. And on the end of this sander, there's a little cutout there that you can, I don't know if you can see
there
that.
you can see it. Okay.
You can get it at a 90 degrees. So I just do a couple turns. So if you're doing the narrow gauge, you're going to just do 6 stringers. And if you're doing the standard, you're going to do 7. So you'll have to cut 7.
The method that she's using to cut, she cut the first one very accurately, and the rest she's using off of that one. That's okay to do as long as you always use the original one to do your measuring. If you use the second or the third one to measure, it could be a little longer or it could be a little shorter. Always use the original cut one. And we know there's a little bit of shaking here. That's because it's a big hunk of wood and it needs to be saw. Why do we not cut these to length? Most of our kits are, you cut them. Our criteria for that is if it's a given, absolute given measurement, we cut it. If it's any chance of it being a variable, you cut it. So things like the ties, they're a given. And you can see the stringers. If you wanted to make it that 1/4 of an inch longer, you could. but that's the criteria that we use. So some of our bigger kits, majority of the little parts are pre-cut.
I've got my 6 done.
Don't throw that other piece away.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, this is the staining process. This is how we do it.
Now you can, you can do this many different ways. You can cut all your pieces first and then do your staining, or you can just stain first. And then after you cut and you start putting your bridge together, you can go back and just touch up the raw ends that aren't stained.
We always
So-
find it's easier to stain all the big pieces as they are big pieces, just like distressing the wood. If you distress the whole piece as opposed to the cut piece, then it's easier. Now, we have a little secret here that we want to show you. If you've ever watched our video on our weathering mix on our website, right in the middle, Maureen spilt the bottle all over the table. And, we didn't blink an eye. I mopped it up and she just kept on going. A little secret for not spilling is to use duct tape, or this is just masking tape,
Packing tape.
packing tape, a
Yeah.
2-inch. So you just put it over like that and it won't spill.
So make sure you've got your gloves on, you've got your weathering mix. And what we're going to do is, we always talk about putting a base coat on your model first, maybe a lighter color so that you can darken up later, do some dry brushing and put different colors on it. I'm going to start with a raw sienna. Some of you I know got driftwood or light brown or medium brown, so you can start with that. Just pour a little bit into a disposable dish. Make sure you put the caps back on your bottles tightly because they are alcohol based. And then usually what I do, if you've got a big enough container, you can kind of just lay your wood in there. These fit in here perfect. And just start coating them. If you want them a little bit darker, you just leave them in a little bit longer.
We're using a raw sienna.
Yeah.
We've done a couple bridges like this, and actually the results are quite good for a color.
Mhm. I usually pop them out onto a paper towel. I just use the tweezers to get them out. You can use your gloves, of course, but they get kind of messy. But just pop them onto a paper towel and try and separate them so that they'll dry.
You're off the picture.
I'm off the picture, okay. There we go. Just spread them out a little bit. You can use newspaper as well. And then I usually try and lay the
Sleeve.
the sleeve with the name of the size of the lumber so I don't get things mixed up. And then if you've got a longer piece, you can just kind of put it in the container and just start brushing the stain on.
You can see we let gravity help us a little bit here.
And I just use a cheap dollar store brush. I've had this for many years. I don't clean it either between my uses. I just use a paper towel and just absorb all the stain off. But you can use alcohol if you want to clean it. So that's done.
We have one customer who uses a PVC pipe, and he seals it at one end, pours the stain in, throws the pieces in, shakes it around, pours the stain out, pulls the pieces out, and they're all stained the same. Great, a whole bunch of pieces to do.
That's a great idea.
My son bought that bodybuilder, that powder stuff, and it comes in a big container, like you see them at Costco, like this screw top. And I kept one of those and I use it, do the same thing, throw a little stain in, shake it around and pour it out. It works pretty well.
That's great.
You can do a stick that's 18, almost, well, probably 16, 18 inches long in that.
Yeah,
You just kind of throw it around and it kind of slices around and then you pour it out.
see, in our bigger kits, our stock is 24 inches long. So all our basswood is 24 inches long. The stuff you buy off the shelf is actually 16 inches. Like if you buy from Mount Albert or if you buy from Northeastern, their stock is all 16 inches long. So if you made the pipe about 18 inches, like you say, that would be great. But to do ours, if you want the 24 inch, it's just as easy to buy an old piece of pipe.
I just remembered that when we did an addition to our house and the contractor abandoned a plan tube. They make a plan tube out of ABS plastic that has a
Yes,
screw cap and it's about that long. And I think it's somewhere in my garage. That would be a great stain vehicle. I'll have to go
sure.
find it.
This, I'm just using a metal sieve here. If you've got small ties like the N scale or the HO, you could feasibly put them all in here and just dunk them in the stain. These are kind of big. Otherwise, I would just dump them all into the mix. And this, which I'm going to do right now, and just coat them. And this is the other thing. If you want it to do different colored ties, I think we did a little session on that maybe several weeks ago. Actually, you can do them. Take a handful, put some in black, put some in a medium brown or really light brown. And then you'll have maybe three, 4 different colors of ties. And when you put them on your stringers, you'll have a varied look of colors. And then just use a black wash to cohere all those colors. But this one, I'm just going to do all raw sienna. Just kind of spread them out here a little bit to dry.
Now, if you read in your instructions that you cut all the wood first, we're kind of getting away from that right now because the braces that go on it, the diagonals, they're a little tricky to do. And we're going to show you some easier ways to do that than what's in our instructions, because sometimes you just can't put it in words, you have to see it.
So I think that's everything stained. I do have a little funnel. I just didn't get it out. So then you need to get your stain back in your bottle.
Look at that for a steady hand. We did have a little funnel, is about at the top was about 1 inch in diameter, and we had it at one of our making takes, and we've never seen it since. Oh well.
Maybe that was more take than make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not have it.
Yeah.
Well, I did not accuse you, but since you said something.
But that's the dollar store is a great source for cheap plastic funnels. They sell 3 for
Yeah.
$1, and
Yeah.
they also sell a really nice colander, which is you can use the 2-pan method where you do all the ties in one bottle and then pour it through into another and just pour the back and forth. That's great.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure,
that's
sure.
a good idea. Great idea. Yeah.
This is called drying time.
Yeah. So you can leave your ties, it leaves some of them in your stain a lot longer and take some of them out a little quicker, and you'll have varied colors as well.
And yeah, okay, these are going to dry a little lighter, but if you want them to be that color darker, you can always add coats to it later.
Yeah.
But we always suggest that you get at least your base coat on before you start cutting and your assembly. If you're going to cut them afterwards, which we're planning to do, don't forget to clean up the ends. You have to stain those later. And that's okay, because when the stain goes on an end cut, like a butt joint, that's what it's called, it's very dark. And that's okay, because in Mother Nature, the ends are always darker than the surfaces.
I'm taking my creosote black and I'm just dry brushing over some of these ties because I want them to have a little bit more black on them.
Hey, Phil, check your chat, please.
And you could do that with your other lumber as well. If you wanted to, like even at this point, if you wanted to do a little bit of dry brushing on it and make it a little darker with another color,
There you can see,
by all means.
you can
do
see the
that.
difference between the ties and these pieces here.
Yeah.
They have a little bit more character in just because of the dry brushing.
Mhm. And I might even go over some of those and do the same thing. Just because I like the color of that. So don't be afraid to just go ahead and do all these different dry brushing techniques with different colors. These are all my stringers, so they're going to be really messy, dark, and dirty.
You can see the distressing marks are coming out a little bit better now too.
Can you hold one of them up, Rick? Do they? I don't know if you can. That might be too close out of focus. I don't know.
There you can see.
Mhm.
Oops. So it probably takes a good 10 minutes maybe for this to kind of dry.
Yeah, that's one of the things about the alcohol. It's very quickly to dry. If you were using the weathering mix on laser cut wood, that's one of the better things about it. It dries quick. And a lot of times it does not have the time to get warped. People ask, what's the shelf life of our weathering mix? You put that cap on tight, it is till next time you use it. Could be years. We've had people that opened a bottle that was, I don't know, 10 years old, 15 years old, and it's just as fresh as the day you bought it.
Now I'm putting some of these back in the sleeve so I can tell what size lumber they are.
If for some reason you don't get the back in the right sleeve for the right size, all you have to do is use the drawing. Like the drawings are extremely accurate, okay? So if you take the hunk of lumber and you put it one way or the other way on the drawing, you'll see exactly what size it is. Especially with this, because there's only like, what, 4 different sizes of wood.
Yeah. I'm just going to take it off the wet paper towel so it dries a little quicker, because we want to try and glue some of these. Spread them out here. Okay, so we were going to, now that the staining's all done, we're going to try and lay out these few ties on a few stringers, just to get ourselves set up for next week.
What we're going to try to do is not do the whole assembly. We're just trying to do like the perimeter of the assembly so it has a chance to dry and then become rigid. So you don't have to worry about flexing it one way or the other. So what we're going to do is, if you can see these little dots here, that is actually the MBW. If you really look close, you can see that that's a hex nut on top of a round washer. So it's every 4th tie. Now, I've had many conversations with many people about they do them every tie, not every 4th tie, not the original bridges. Only up till, I don't know, maybe 1920, they did every 4th tie. And being a national judge, I have had that conversation with other judges that the person has done it right at every 4th tie.
So what you want to do is either use your masking tape, or if you've got double-sided tape, you can use that as well. But we want to put a piece of tape across your drawing right in the middle of the ties.
Sticky
And
side up.
sticky side up. Just tape down each end.
And try and get it as taut as possible.
Yeah. Okay, and then what we're gonna do now, the ties could be a little bit drier, so if you're at home, maybe, wait a little bit longer before you do this, but you can put them on every fourth tie. So wherever the little dot is for the NBW.
And of course, in the middle, it's not 4 ties because it's not divisible by 4 throughout the whole assembly.
Just get them down there. It's hard for them to stick if they're not completely dry, but. Oops.
So you can see how they like to move around. So what we're going to try and do is get it to a rigid point.
Okay. And I use Tight Bond. I have just the original. I like the Tight Bond 2 as well. I'll make sure this is, yeah. And I've got one of these little applicator bottles, which really works well. So what I'm going to do, because your first stringer goes right along the edge of those ties. And we're going to put one on each side just to get it rigid. Okay.
There's just a little point about building a structure. When you have a rectangle piece of wood, you don't lie it like this. You always lie it the longest length upwards. That's the strongest. So this is much stronger this way than it is that way. So when you do any type of construction, you have to have it in the upright position.
Okay. So I'm just going to put a little dab on the end of each of these ties.
Isn't that applicator neat?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so take your stringer and just get it right along the edge. Whoops, sorry. And then if you've got any glue oozing out, and I don't, that I can see, but I usually take a tweezers and just scrape it away. There's a little bit here, but it looks pretty good. Looks like it's on there pretty good. Whoops. So I'm just going to hold that for a second. And while I'm holding it, I'll just take my glue and do the other.
This is why you want a glue that gets tacky really quick.
There we go. And get another one. Another stringer. Right along the edge. Looks good. Got a little bit of glue on the edge here, so I'm going to take that off. And it looks good on the inside. That looks pretty good. So then I need a weight.
Now the best thing that's used for weight is our bottles of weathering mix. There's 8 ounces of them.
I might just put my cutting board on top, actually, and then put the bottles on.
So sometimes you'll see us at a show with one of the big structures and you'll see 10, 15, 20 bottles all lined up. It looks like you're trying to do a domino thing, but actually it's just to weigh it down.
Yeah.
And we do have some weights around somewhere, but the stuff that's on the table works fine.
Mm-hmm.
So now when you let that set, preferably overnight if you can, then you have a rigid assembly to work with. Now the rest is really easy, and it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, where you put all the rest of the stringers on or all the rest of the ties. We kind of prefer to put the stringers all on first, and then turn it over and put the ties. Now, one of the neat things and this is another reason for doing it every 4th tie, is, okay, every 4th tie, that means there's 3 ties in between it. So you put one in the middle and one on the quarter and one on the 3/4. Don't use the drawing, use your eye. So we know that every fourth tie is perpendicular to everything, and it's square. So the other ones you put on there just by your eyesight. And you can tell right away if it's one's a little closer or one's a little farther away. And I think what we'll do,
I don't know how our time is, if we can.
yeah, how's our time, Jim?
It's about it.
That's about it.
Okay,
Okay, so what we want you to do for homework,
well,
or do you want to wait till next week?
or just finish them up next week.
Okay, well, maybe put the rest of the stringers on.
Okay,
Okay, so for homework, put the rest of the stringers on.
and then we'll go for the ties next.
And then next week, we'll review the quarter, half, and 3/4 ties for next week.
And do the NBW.
And MBWs.
So,
We don't do all the MBWs at once because you get to a point where you can't get your hand in to put them in. So we do them in stages along the whole assembly line. So next week we'll be doing that. So we'll put you put the rest of the stringers on for homework, and we'll put the rest of the ties on next week and put the MBWs on. And it's almost looking like a bridge.
and if you can get yourself a pair of tweezers like this that are really pointy and even on an angle, the pointiness is the most important thing. That will help immensely when you're putting in the NBWs. And if you're doing N scale, we don't use NBWs. We just use a little fine tipped felt pen, and it's a rust colored pen.
And this is non-bleeding.
You can get them at Michael's. I think that's it.
Yeah, problem with getting them at Michael's is you have to buy the set just to get the red one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the end of this session, guys. Good luck with it. We're only an email away. If you run into our little problem that you want us to solve, we're here, okay? So we're here to get this job finished. Okay, back to you, Jim.
Well, that's fantastic, guys. Thanks so very much. Really do appreciate it. And I do